Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Mimi G, and today I'm going to be showing you how to copy your favorite t-shirt. So one of the things that I love to do is, aside from creating my clothing from scratch, is to see something I really love at a store, buy it, take it home, rub it off and create a pattern, and then make that garment as many times as I want to out of as many fabrics as I want to. So we're gonna start with the very basics. I'm gonna show you how to copy your favorite t-shirt. Let's get started. Now, if you're new to sewing, you might wanna check out my online sewing school, sewitacademy.com, where we teach in-depth, step-by-step sewing lessons. Now, if you just need a refresher course, you can watch the sewing basics video linked in the description box below, then come back and sew along with me. All right, guys, so one of my favorite things to wear are t-shirts, but it's not always easy to find a t-shirt in the fabric that I like or the size that I want. And so what I love to do is take some of my favorite t-shirts and then copy them so then I can make them out of whatever fabric I feel like it. So I'm gonna show you really quickly how to do a fast and easy way to transfer your t-shirt. So what I like to do is I fold my t-shirt in half and then I press the center of it so I can create this little crease here. I take my piece of paper and I fold it in half. Now I get this roll of piece of paper from Amazon, but you could tape together, 5 or 6 printer sheets of paper if you have them handy at home, just enough so that you can copy 1/2 of your shirt. So the reason I use the bigger piece is because I like to fold it in half. That way when I trace 1/2 and then I open my paper, I have a full front piece versus a half piece. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna create your crease and you're gonna place the crease along the fold of your paper. Now, if you wanna put something down to hold it in place, you can, but it's really not that necessary. It's not that surgical. You can just use a Sharpie or a pencil or a marker or a pen, whatever you have handy. I like to use a tracing wheel. Now, this is a tracing wheel that has the little spikes on it, but the one that comes sort of basic at Joann's or in any sewing kit that you could probably get doesn't have the little sharp ones, but it does have the little rounded edges, and when you press firmly, it creates little tiny dots and markings on your paper that you can then trace over. So you can use either method. I'm gonna show you both. So the first thing you're gonna do is first you're just gonna copy, literally trace around the body of your shirt. Now you can also use a ruler if you wanna be super precise. And I'm just gonna make some dashed lines. I'll join all of that later. And then I'm gonna do the same thing on the side. And now we're gonna do our shoulder. So I do my shoulder, not including the band, okay? So stop before the band. And then I would use my tracing wheel here to mark this area, right? So this is my front neck. Now if I remove that, I have little markings. You can't see them on camera, but they're there. I can see them and I can feel them. So that makes it easy because then I could just go over with my Sharpie and follow those little lines, dots that I made to get a really precise front neck. Now, if you don't have that, right, if you don't want to have one of these handy, you can use a basic pin and just put it through where your neckline is and make a dot, and then just move over 1 inch or so and make a dot. Move over again, make a dot, and proceed until you have the entire neckline in place. Now we're just gonna do the same thing sort of here around the arm's eye. So you can either use your tracing wheel and just go over it right in that seam line. And then when I remove it, I can see the little dots that I just created. But if not, you can just turn your sleeve back along that seam line that you see, and then just do it little by little. And now you can go ahead and remove this. And now we have the front of our t-shirt. So if we go ahead and cut around our lines, when we open it up, we have a full front. So I like to label this front t-shirt. However, before we cut it out, we need to add seam allowance, right? Because if you sew this without adding seam allowance, it's gonna be slightly smaller than the t-shirt you just copied. So you have to add seam allowance. So just take your ruler. I like to add at least 1 inch to the hem of my t-shirts. You can always make it shorter or longer. And then I'm gonna add 5/8 of an inch to my side. And then I'm going to add it to my arm's eye. I'm going to add it to my shoulder. And I'm going to only add a 1/2 inch to my neck, okay? Okay, now we're going to go ahead and cut along the outer lines that we just created. Now I have the front piece. We're going to use this to create our back piece and then just bring up the neckline. All right, so I folded another piece of paper so that I could cut out my back, and I'm going to use my pattern waist, which are just really big washers from the home improvement store. I'm going to make sure that my fold lines are aligned. And you're basically just going to cut around this. The only difference is the back, the neckline at the back. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the back of our neck on our t-shirt to copy the height. So I'm going to fold it in half. I'm going to match my shoulders. And then using my little sharp tool here, my tracing wheel, I'm going to trace through the back. And this is the distance from the back of the neck and the front of the neck. Now you can just go ahead, take your scissors, and cut all the way around. Now you have your back, you can go ahead and mark it. Now we're going to copy our sleeve. All right, now we're going to copy our sleeve. So I have folded my paper in half. My fold is here. I'm going to place my sleeve so that it sits on that fold line just like this. Now you want to make sure to iron out your sleeve so it's not wrinkled. You need to be able to get this underarm seam and your hem all in place, okay? So use weights if you need to keep it all nice and flat. Okay, now I'm just going to use my Sharpie and just go along the edge of my hem. And then that underarm, you want to make sure that you get that. And then using my little tracing wheel, I'm just going to go through. And again, remember you can do that by just lifting and marking along your seam line. I'm going to remove this. And now I'm going to add my seam allowance. So you can add however much you want at the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and do 5/8. I'm going to do a 1/2 inch on my underarm seam. And then a 1/2 inch along my sleeve cap. And now I'm just going to cut around. And now you have your sleeve. Okay, so now we need to take off just a tad bit over here on the back side of your sleeve. So we need to trim off about 1/4 of an inch. And so the easiest way to do that first is to fold it in half and then fold your sleeve in half again. And what you're gonna do is you're going to go from nothing here at this first crease line till you get to this little middle crease line here. You're gonna go from nothing to about 1/4 inch. And when you start to reach this final crease, you're gonna start blending back into the original sleeve. So I'm gonna just show you. I'm gonna do it by hand. I'm just gonna eyeball it. So I'm just gonna go 1/4 inch. Now that I'm at my last fold line, I'm gonna just start going right back into my original sleeve. And then I'm gonna trim that off. And then I'm just gonna put 2 little notches so that I know that's the back of my sleeve, and then just one here. And I'll make a little line for my shoulder. Okay, once you have your 3 pieces, you have your sleeve, you have your back and your front. You're going to cut 2 of your sleeve. You're gonna cut 1 of your back and 1 of your front. Now the last thing that we need to do before we start sewing our t-shirt is to make our neckband. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm just going to lay this flat, as flat as I can. And then just use your tape measure and measure out how long that is. So for me, that's about 10.5, and I'm gonna add a 1/4 inch to my pattern piece, which will give me a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And I want it to be 2 inches wide. So I'm gonna measure out my 10.5 plus that 1/4 inch that I'm adding for seam allowance. When you unfold this piece, you'll have a full 1/2 inch. And I want it to be 2 inches wide, and my ruler's 2 inches wide, so I'm just going to copy around my ruler, making sure that I am on the fold of my paper so that when I open this, I have 1 full piece. And this 2 inches, in case you're wondering, is with seam allowance included. And now you're just gonna cut around this. And you can label it neckband. And this center crease, I'm gonna make a little line. That's just so that I know that this is the center front of my neckband. All right, so I have cut out my neckband, right? And so when I open this up, it's 1 full long piece. I have 2 sleeves that I've cut out, and I have my front and my back piece. Now that we have all of our pieces, we can sew this t-shirt together. All right, we're gonna start by sewing our shoulders together. So you're gonna place right sides facing, front to back. And go ahead and pin. Okay, now I want you to go to your sewing machine. You're just gonna stitch across your shoulders using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, I went ahead and serged my seam allowance and pressed my seams. Now I'm gonna go ahead and pin and sew my sleeve using the flat method. That's the way I always attach anything, any of my sleeves using a knit fabric. So I made the 2 little notches for the back on my sleeve, and then I did the shoulder and I did the single notch to let me know that that's the front. So I'm gonna just match up first my shoulder seam, and I'm gonna pin, and then making sure that the single notch is in the front, I'm gonna pin. And because it's knit and it stretches, I'm just going to pull a little bit to ease that sleeve cap in. And then do the same thing for the back. Okay, now you're gonna go to your sewing machine and you're going to stitch using 1/2 inch seam allowances. Okay, I'm gonna back stitch at the beginning and at the end. Then I'm just gonna pull slightly. You're gonna pin and sew your other sleeve the same way. Okay, once you have both your sleeves sewn in, you're gonna go ahead and place right sides facing, and we're going to pin our underarm seam and then down our side seam, and you're just gonna stitch that down using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. So I'm gonna go ahead and pin. And if you wanna make your t-shirt a little slouchier, or maybe you want it just a little wider, you can always add bigger seam allowances. Okay, you're gonna pin your other underarm and side seam the same way. Head over to your sewing machine. You're just going to stitch down using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then finish your seam allowance either with a serger or your zigzag stitch. All right, once you have your side seams done, we're gonna go ahead and do our neckband. So I went ahead and stitched both ends together to create this little loop. And now what I want you to do is take it to your ironing table, fold it in half, and give it a good press. Fold it wrong sides facing. Okay, I went ahead and pressed my neckband in place. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna pin it to our neckband. So I have a little tiny notch that I marked on my neckband, remember, to let me know where the center front was. So I am going to pin that to the center front of my shirt. And then I'm going to pin at my center back. Now when you do your pinning, you might notice that your neckband is maybe too big for your neckline. That can happen very easily. And you want your neckband to be slightly smaller than the neck opening because you want it to snap into place. So if you feel like your neckband is too big or it's not snapping or you don't feel like you're needing to pull very much to attach it, then you might want to remove some of the length from your neckband. Okay, now that I have my neckband pinned in place, I'm gonna stitch all the way around using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I'm gonna start at my center back stitch at the beginning and at the end. Go ahead and serge off your seam allowance and then press your neckband up. Now go ahead and make sure that you press your neckband into place. Sometimes it just needs a really good pressing so that it can lay flat. Now the only thing left for you to do is to do the hem of your sleeve and of course the hem of your t-shirt, folding under however much hem allowance you gave yourself, and then stitching using a narrow zigzag stitch, and you are all done. Well, that's all there is to it. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. Please make sure and follow me on Instagram if you're not doing so already, @MimiGStyle. Until next time, peace.